I stood in my childhood bedroom packing the last of my belongings while my family screamed accusations downstairs. My younger sister Madison had just told our parents that I stole $1,500 from Madison's college fund, the money I actually used to help our grandmother pay for her medication. But nobody believed me. My father pounded on the door demanding I leave immediately. As I loaded my car in the rain, I swore I would never forgive them for choosing Madison's lies over my honesty. 3 months had passed since that terrible night when everything fell apart. I woke up every morning in my cramped studio apartment, staring at water stains on the ceiling that reminded me how far my life had fallen. The place cost $800 a month, which ate up most of my income from waitressing at Romano's Italian restaurant downtown. My shifts ran from 11 in the morning until nearly midnight, serving endless plates of pasta to customers who treated me like furniture. My feet ached constantly from standing on cheap linoleum floors, and my uniform always smelled like garlic and disappointment. Tips barely covered groceries, so I lived on ramen noodles and whatever leftover bread the kitchen threw away. Sleep came in restless fragments between the sound of sirens and my upstairs neighbor's television blasting reality shows until 3 in the morning. The worst part was the silence from my family. My parents had completely cut off contact, refusing to answer calls or respond to texts. Even my younger brother Jake, who I had tutored through high school math and driven to soccer practice for years, acted like I no longer existed. When I tried calling him, his phone went straight to voicemail and he never returned my messages. My childhood best friend Ashley had stopped speaking to me too. We had been inseparable since 2nd grade, sharing secrets and dreams about our futures. But after my parents spread their version of events throughout our neighborhood, Ashley believed I had become someone she could not trust. The betrayal stung deeper than losing my family because Ashley had known me my entire life and still chose to believe the worst. 4 months after being kicked out, I decided to return to my childhood home to collect some forgotten belongings. My parents were at work, and Madison should have been at her part-time job at the mall. I used the spare key hidden under the fake rock near the garden hose, just like when we were kids, sneaking back inside after curfew. Walking through the house felt like touring a museum of my former life. Family photos on the mantelpiece showed my gap-toothed smile at various birthdays and holidays, but newer pictures seemed to focus only on Madison. My bedroom had been transformed into what looked like a home office, with all traces of my existence carefully erased. I headed to my old closet, searching for my high school yearbooks and a jewelry box my grandmother had given me for my 16th birthday. That was when I noticed Madison's door was slightly open. Something compelled me to look inside, maybe hoping to understand why she had destroyed our relationship so completely. Madison's room looked exactly the same as always. Clothes scattered across unmade sheets, makeup brushes covering her vanity, and textbooks stacked haphazardly on her desk. But when I walked closer to her jewelry box, a corner of paper peeked out from underneath. My curiosity got the better of me, and I lifted the box to see what she was hiding. What I found made my blood turn to ice water. Printed bank statements with my name and account number showed withdrawals I had never made. The dates corresponded perfectly with when Madison claimed I stole from her college fund. But these transactions never happened. I had never withdrawn that money, and these statements were clearly fabricated using some kind of computer program. My hands shook as I realized the elaborate nature of Madison's deception. She had not only lied about me stealing from her, but she had created fake evidence to support her story. The level of planning and malice required to forge bank documents showed this was not some impulsive teenage mistake. This was calculated character assassination. I took photos of the fake statements with my phone and carefully placed everything back exactly as I found it. My heart raced as I gathered my belongings and left the house, constantly looking over my shoulder like a criminal. But I was not the criminal here. Madison was. That evening, I called my mother, hoping the evidence would finally clear my name. Carol answered on the 4th ring, her voice cold and distant when she heard my voice. "Mom, I need to show you something important. I found proof that Madison lied about me stealing that money." "Kitty, we have been through this already. You need to stop making excuses and take responsibility for what you did. Please, just look at what I found. I have photos of fake bank statements Madison created. She planted evidence to make me look guilty. My mother was quiet for a long moment. Then she sighed heavily like I was an exhausting child having a tantrum. You know what this sounds like to me? It sounds like someone who got caught stealing is now so desperate that she would break into her own family's home and fabricate evidence. Madison told us you might try something like this. The conversation ended with my mother hanging up on me. I sat in my tiny apartment staring at the photos on my phone, knowing I had concrete proof of Madison's lies, but feeling completely powerless to make anyone believe the truth. Over the next few weeks, I learned that my parents had been talking to neighbors and family friends about my supposed theft and emotional instability. Mrs. Henderson from across the street gave me dirty looks when I drove through the neighborhood. My Aunt Susan blocked me on social media. The story of my alleged crimes had spread through our community like wildfire, burning away my reputation and relationships. 8 months after my exile began, small improvements started appearing in my daily routine. Romano's promoted me to assistant manager, which came with a modest salary increase and slightly more predictable hours. The extra $200 per month allowed me to move into a better apartment with working air conditioning and neighbors who did not blast music all night. My new place was a one-bedroom unit above a bakery called Sweet Dreams, and the smell of fresh bread and cinnamon rolls wafted through my windows every morning. The elderly woman who owned the bakery, Mrs. Chen, was kind enough to offer me day-old pastries at half price, which significantly improved my diet beyond instant noodles and peanut butter sandwiches. Working at the restaurant had taught me valuable skills about managing people and handling difficult customers with grace. I discovered I had a natural talent for resolving conflicts and organizing schedules efficiently. The owner, Mr. Romano, began trusting me with ordering supplies and training new servers. For the first time since leaving home, I felt capable and valued. One Tuesday evening during a particularly busy dinner rush, a customer spilled red wine all over his date's white dress. While she cried in the bathroom, I helped him brainstorm solutions. I suggested the dry cleaner next door that offered same-day service, gave them a gift card for a future meal, and personally drove to a nearby department store to buy her a replacement outfit in the same size. The customer turned out to be David Matthews, a graphic designer who specialized in creating marketing materials for local businesses. His date was impressed by my quick thinking and genuine concern for their evening. David stayed after closing time to thank me properly and ask if I would be interested in getting coffee sometime. David was different from anyone I had dated before. He listened when I talked, asked thoughtful questions about my goals and dreams, and never made me feel like I was competing for his attention. He had dark brown hair that curled slightly when it got humid, and his eyes crinkled when he laughed at my terrible jokes about restaurant customers. We spent our first official date walking through Riverside Park, sharing stories about our childhoods and career aspirations. David grew up in a stable family where his parents still held hands after 25 years of marriage. His biggest trauma was losing his pet hamster in 3rd grade. I felt envious of his uncomplicated relationship with his family, but also grateful that he could show me what normal looked like. After 2 months of dating, I finally felt brave enough to share an abbreviated version of my family situation. I explained that we had experienced some conflict over money and were currently not speaking. David accepted my explanation without pressing for details, which made me trust him even more. He encouraged my secret dream of opening a bakery someday, listening patiently as I described elaborate cakes and pastries I wanted to create. David even helped me research business licenses and startup costs, treating my ideas like viable plans rather than impossible fantasies. "You light up when you talk about baking," he told me one evening as we shared tiramisu at a restaurant across town. "I've never seen anyone get so excited about butter and flour." 6 months into our relationship, David suggested I apply for a small business loan to start my bakery. The idea terrified me, but his confidence in my abilities made it seem possible. I spent weeks perfecting my business plan, researching commercial kitchen rentals, and calculating potential profits. The loan application process required a comprehensive credit check, which I approached with cautious optimism. I had always been responsible with money, paying bills on time and avoiding unnecessary debt. My credit score should have been solid enough for a modest business loan. But when the loan officer called with results, her tone was apologetic and confused. "Ms. Thompson, I am afraid we cannot approve your loan application. Your credit report shows multiple delinquent accounts and outstanding debts totaling over $12,000. There are also several accounts that appear to have been opened without proper verification." My stomach dropped as she listed credit cards from stores I had never visited and purchases I had never made. Victoria's Secret, Best Buy, Target, and Nordstrom all showed maxed out cards with my name and social security number. The addresses on the accounts were all variations of my childhood home. There must be some mistake. I have never opened any of these accounts. According to our records, all accounts were opened with proper identification and verification. However, if you believe this is identity theft, I recommend contacting the credit bureaus and filing police reports immediately. After hanging up, I sat in my car outside the bank, feeling like the walls of my new life were crumbling around me. Madison had not only destroyed my relationship with my family, but she had been systematically destroying my financial future as well. I drove straight to the police station and filed a report for identity theft. The officer who took my statement was sympathetic, but explained that proving fraud between family members was notoriously difficult, especially when I had been living in the same house when some accounts were opened. When I called the credit card companies to dispute the charges, I discovered that Madison had been making minimum payments to keep the accounts active. She was smart enough to maintain the illusion that I was a functioning card holder who had simply moved to a different address. But the most crushing blow came when I tried to present evidence to my father. Harold answered his phone on the second ring, which surprised me since he had been avoiding my calls for months. "Dad, I need to talk to you about something serious. Madison has been opening credit cards in my name and destroying my credit." "Kitty, you need to stop this. Madison told us you might try to blame her for your own financial irresponsibility. She said you probably gave her permission to use your information before you left, and now you are having regrets." "That is completely untrue. I never gave her permission for anything. I have police reports and documentation proving fraud." My father was quiet for a moment, then spoke in a tone I had never heard before, cold and businesslike. "If you continue to harass our family with these accusations, we will have no choice but to contact our attorney. Madison has been through enough trauma because of your behavior. Leave her alone." The call ended with a dial tone that echoed in my empty apartment. I realized I was not just fighting Madison anymore. I was fighting my entire family's resources, their lawyer, and their collective commitment to protecting her lies. 10 months later, David and I had settled into a comfortable rhythm despite my ongoing credit struggles. He knew about the identity theft, but respected my reluctance to discuss family details. We spent quiet evenings cooking dinner together, exploring new hiking trails on weekends, and planning small adventures that fit our modest budget. David's graphic design business had grown steadily through word-of-mouth referrals. He specialized in creating websites and marketing materials for restaurants, which is how we discovered our shared passion for food presentation. I loved watching him work, transforming simple ingredients into artistic photographs that made people hungry just looking at them. One Thursday evening at Romano's, David appeared during my shift carrying a bouquet of sunflowers and wearing his best button-down shirt. I was wiping down tables after the dinner rush when he approached my section with an unusual nervous energy. "Kitty, could you sit down for a minute? I have something important to ask you." My heart began racing as he knelt down next to my chair. Other customers in the restaurant started paying attention, sensing something special was happening. "The last year and a half has been the best time of my life. You make me laugh every day. You inspire me with your strength and determination, and you believe in dreams I never thought were possible. I want to spend the rest of my life supporting your goals and building something beautiful together." He opened a small velvet box containing a simple but elegant diamond ring that caught the restaurant lighting perfectly. "Kitty Marie Thompson, will you marry me?" Through tears of joy and disbelief, I managed to whisper yes before he slipped the ring onto my finger. The entire restaurant erupted in applause, and Mr. Romano sent over a bottle of champagne to celebrate. For the first time in nearly 2 years, I felt completely happy and hopeful about the future. But as we talked about wedding planning over the following weeks, David gently suggested that I consider reaching out to my family for reconciliation. He came from a close-knit family where conflicts were resolved through honest conversation and compromise. The idea that parents and siblings could permanently cut ties over money seemed foreign and fixable to him. I know things are complicated with your family, but this is your wedding. Maybe they would want to put the past behind them for such an important occasion. His suggestion filled me with anxiety, but I also recognized the wisdom in his words. Carrying anger and hurt into my marriage did not seem like the healthiest foundation for our life together. Maybe enough time had passed for wounds to heal and perspectives to change. The thought of facing my parents after everything that had happened felt overwhelming, but I decided to start with my grandmother, Dorothy. She had always been my strongest advocate and closest confidant during childhood. If anyone in my family would be willing to listen with an open heart, it would be her. Dorothy lived in a small ranch house about 20 minutes from my childhood home. She had raised me during the summers when my mother worked double shifts as a nurse, teaching me how to bake cookies and plant tomatoes in her garden. Her house still smelled like vanilla candles and fabric softener, exactly like I remembered. When I knocked on her door, Dorothy looked older and more fragile than I expected. Her silver hair was thinner, and she moved slowly as she invited me inside. But her eyes still held the same warmth and intelligence I remembered from childhood. "Kitty, sweetheart, I have missed you so much. Come sit down and tell me everything." We spent an hour catching up on safe topics: my job at the restaurant, my new apartment, and my engagement to David. Dorothy seemed genuinely happy about my upcoming marriage, asking detailed questions about wedding plans and expressing excitement about meeting my future husband. But when I brought up the situation with my parents and Madison, her demeanor changed noticeably. She became fidgety and kept glancing toward the windows as if she was worried someone might be listening. "Grandma, I need to ask you something important. Do you remember when I visited you last year to help pay for your heart medication? The prescription that cost almost $1,500. Dorothy nodded slowly, her expression growing more serious. "I paid for that medication with my own money because I wanted to help you. But Madison told my parents that I stole that money from her college fund. That accusation is why they kicked me out of the house." My grandmother was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands folded in her lap. Then she looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "Kitty, I need to tell you something that I should have said a long time ago. I know you didn't steal any money from Madison." My heart started pounding as I realized she might have information that could clear my name. "What do you mean? How do you know?" Dorothy got up slowly and walked to her kitchen, returning with a small metal box that contained important papers and receipts. She pulled out a pharmacy receipt dated exactly 1 day after Madison's accusation. "This shows that you paid for my medication with your own credit card. I saved it because I wanted to pay you back when my Social Security check came in. But then everything happened so fast with your family, and I got scared." I stared at the receipt with my name clearly printed at the bottom, along with the exact amount Madison had accused me of stealing. "Grandma, this proves I'm innocent. Why didn't you show this to my parents?" Dorothy's face crumpled with guilt and fear. "Madison came to see me the day before she accused you. She asked me all kinds of questions about your visit. When you came, how much the medication cost, whether you paid for it yourself. At the time, I thought she was just being considerate about your generosity." The pieces were starting to fall into place. Madison had gathered information from Dorothy to make her lie more believable and detailed. "But after your parents kicked you out, Madison visited me again. She said that if I ever told anyone about the receipt or your payment, she would convince Harold to put me in a nursing home. She said I was getting too old and confused to live alone safely." My blood boiled with anger at Madison's manipulation of our elderly grandmother. Dorothy depended on Harold for help with bill paying and transportation to doctor appointments. The threat of losing her independence and beloved home was enough to keep her silent. She also said that if I supported your story, it would just cause more family drama and hurt everyone worse. She convinced me that keeping quiet was the kindest thing for everyone involved. I held my grandmother's hands while she cried about her fear and guilt over staying silent for so long. I have been so worried about you, sweetheart. I wanted to call and check on you, but Madison said that would just give you false hope about reconciling with your parents. For the first time since being kicked out, I had concrete proof of my innocence and evidence of Madison's elaborate deception. But I also realized that my sister's manipulation extended far beyond lying about money. She'd been systematically controlling information and relationships to protect her lies. Grandma, would you be willing to show this receipt to my parents? This could finally clear my name and expose what Madison has been doing. Dorothy looked terrified at the suggestion, but she slowly nodded. I am tired of being afraid, and I am tired of watching you suffer for something you didn't do. Yes, I will help you tell the truth. As I left my grandmother's house that afternoon, I felt a mixture of hope and determination I had not experienced in almost 2 years. Finally, I had an ally who could corroborate my innocence and help expose Madison's web of lies. 6 weeks before my wedding date, I was arranging flowers in my apartment when my phone rang with a number I had not seen in almost 2 years. My father's cell phone. My hands trembled as I answered, uncertain what to expect after such a long silence. "Hello, Kitty. This is your dad." His voice sounded formal and carefully controlled, like he was reading from a script. "Hi, Dad. I'm surprised to hear from you. Your mother and I have been doing some thinking about your upcoming wedding. We realize that families should be together during important life events, regardless of past disagreements." The word disagreement struck me as a massive understatement for being falsely accused and kicked out of my family, but I stayed quiet and let him continue. "We would like to attend your wedding and support you during this special time. Madison feels the same way. She wants to put everything behind us and move forward as a family." My initial reaction was cautious relief mixed with deep suspicion. After nearly 2 years of complete silence and rejection, their sudden desire for reconciliation seemed conveniently timed with my engagement to someone they had never met. "That would mean a lot to me, Dad, but I need to know that you understand what really happened with Madison's accusations. I never stole any money from her, and I have proof of my innocence. Kitty, we don't need to relitigate the past. What matters is that we are family, and families forgive each other and move on. Your mother is very excited about planning wedding details with you." Before I could respond, I heard my mother's voice in the background asking to speak with me. "Kitty, sweetie, I have missed you so much. I know we have had our differences, but I want to be part of your special day. I have been looking at mother of the bride dresses and thinking about flowers for your bouquet." Hearing my mother's voice again after such a long time made me emotional despite my reservations. Part of me desperately wanted to believe that my family genuinely missed me and wanted to reconcile. "Mom, I've missed you too, but before we can move forward, we need to address what happened. I never stole from Madison and I can prove it." "Oh, honey, let's not dwell on ancient history. People make mistakes when they're young and stressed about money. The important thing is that we love you and want to celebrate your new beginning." I noticed that neither of my parents had actually apologized for falsely accusing me or acknowledged that Madison had lied. Their version of reconciliation seemed to require me accepting blame for something I did not do. 2 days later, Madison sent me a text message that was clearly crafted to sound remorseful and mature. "Hi, Kitty. I know things have been really hard between us, and I want you to know that I'm sorry for my part in our family problems. I was young and made some bad choices that hurt everyone. I hope we can be sisters again and that I can be part of your wedding. I love you and miss having you in my life." The message was carefully worded to imply responsibility without actually admitting to any specific wrongdoing. She apologized for her part in our family problems rather than acknowledging that she had falsely accused me and destroyed my reputation. David encouraged me to see their outreach as a positive development and suggested that I invite them to dinner to discuss wedding plans. He believed that face-to-face conversation would help resolve lingering tensions and allow everyone to move forward productively. Against my better judgment, I agreed to host my parents and Madison at my apartment the following Saturday. I spent the entire week cleaning, cooking, and preparing for what I hoped would be a healing conversation about our family's future. When they arrived, I was struck by how different they looked. My father had gained weight and appeared older than his 53 years. My mother seemed nervous and overly cheerful, complimenting my apartment and asking dozens of questions about David's family background. Madison looked exactly the same, tall, blonde, and confident in a way that had always made me feel invisible by comparison. She hugged me tightly and complimented my engagement ring with what seemed like genuine enthusiasm. During dinner, the conversation focused entirely on wedding logistics and my future plans with David. My parents asked detailed questions about his job, his family's financial situation, and our plans for buying a house. Madison wondered aloud about honeymoon destinations and whether David and I planned to have children soon. Nobody mentioned the accusations that had torn our family apart. Nobody apologized for the 2 years of silence and rejection. Nobody acknowledged that I had been telling the truth about my innocence. After dinner, I excused myself to get dessert from the kitchen, leaving the door slightly open so I could hear their conversation. What I overheard made my blood run cold. "So his design business is really that successful?" my mother asked quietly. "According to my research, David's family owns 3 restaurants in the suburbs, plus his father has some kind of consulting business. They're definitely well off," my father replied. Madison chimed in with excitement. "If Kitty gets in good with his family, maybe they could help Dad expand his construction business, and I could finally get my own apartment instead of living at home." "Let's not get ahead of ourselves," my mother cautioned. "But it's certainly nice that Kitty found someone stable after all her problems. This could work out well for everyone." I stood frozen in my kitchen, realizing that their sudden desire for reconciliation had nothing to do with love or forgiveness. They had researched David's background and decided that my marriage could provide financial opportunities for them. My father continued in a low voice. "We just need to be supportive through the wedding, and then we can slowly build a relationship with his family. These restaurant people stick together. If we play this right, there could be business connections for years." The betrayal felt even worse than being kicked out 2 years earlier. At least then they had believed Madison's lies and thought they were protecting their family from a thief. Now they knew they had wronged me, but they were willing to pretend everything was fine if it meant accessing my fiancé's family wealth. I composed myself and returned to the dining room with a frozen cheesecake, acting like I had not heard anything. For the rest of the evening, I played along with their charade while internally planning my response to this manipulative scheme. After they left, I called David and told him about the overheard conversation. He was shocked and disgusted by their mercenary approach to our relationship. "So they want to use our wedding as a networking opportunity. That's incredibly selfish and insulting." "It gets worse," I replied. "They still haven't acknowledged that I was innocent of Madison's accusations. They want me to just pretend it never happened so they can benefit from marrying into your family." David was quiet for a long moment, processing the depth of my family's dysfunction. "What do you want to do? This is your decision, and I'll support whatever you choose." For the first time since being kicked out, I felt completely clear about my course of action. My family had shown me exactly who they were and what I meant to them. Now it was time to show them who I had become. Armed with the knowledge of my family's true motives and Dorothy's evidence of my innocence, I decided to conduct my own thorough investigation into Madison's pattern of deception. If she had been systematically lying and stealing for years, there would be other victims and more evidence. I started by reaching out to my Uncle Peter, my father's younger brother, who'd always been the black sheep of the family. Peter worked as a mechanic and lived in a modest apartment across town. He had never married and preferred spending weekends fishing rather than attending family gatherings. When I called him, Peter seemed surprised but pleased to hear from me. "Kitty, I was wondering when you'd get in touch. I heard about your engagement. Congratulations. When's the wedding? Thank you, Uncle Peter. Actually, I was hoping we could meet for coffee. I wanted to ask you about some family stuff that's been bothering me. We met at a diner near his garage the next afternoon. Peter looked older than I remembered, with graying hair and work-worn hands that spoke to decades of hard labor. But his eyes were still sharp and observant. After catching up on basic life updates, I explained the situation with Madison's false accusations and my subsequent exile from the family. I always thought that story didn't sound right, Peter said, stirring sugar into his coffee. You were the most responsible kid I knew. It never made sense that you would steal from your own sister. Did Madison ever approach you for money or tell you stories about me causing problems? Peter's expression darkened as he recalled something unpleasant. About 6 months after you got kicked out, Madison called me crying about a car accident. She said you had borrowed her car without permission and crashed it into a telephone pole. The repairs were going to cost $3,000, and your parents couldn't afford to fix it because they were already dealing with the money you had stolen. My stomach dropped as I realized Madison had been using my name to scam money from extended family members. She begged me to loan her the money, promising that your parents would pay me back as soon as they could. I felt bad for her because she seemed so upset and stressed about everything your family was going through. Uncle Peter, I never borrowed Madison's car and I certainly never crashed it. Did you ever see any damage to her vehicle? He shook his head slowly, understanding the implications of my question. Now that you mention it, no. When I gave her the money, I asked to see the damage and maybe get a quote from my mechanic friend for a second opinion. But she said the car was already in the shop and her parents were handling all the insurance paperwork. Peter pulled out his phone and scrolled through his text messages, finding the conversation with Madison from months earlier. Look at this. She sent me photos of a badly damaged car, but when I zoom in, you can see it's a stock photo from some insurance website. The license plate is from a different state. We spent another hour going through Peter's interactions with Madison, identifying several red flags that made more sense in hindsight. She had been evasive about details, reluctant to involve her parents directly, and unwilling to provide documentation or evidence. I'm embarrassed that I fell for it, Peter admitted. But she seemed so genuine about the family crisis and your supposed problems. I wanted to help during what I thought was a difficult time. Before leaving the diner, I asked Peter if he would be willing to share his story with my parents when the time was right. He agreed immediately, expressing anger about being manipulated and used in Madison's scheme. My next step was investigating whether Madison had targeted other people in our community. I drove through our old neighborhood looking for elderly neighbors who might have been vulnerable to her manipulation. I decided to visit Mrs. Thompson, who lived 2 houses down from my childhood home. She was in her 70s and had always been kind to neighborhood kids, giving out full-size candy bars on Halloween and letting us pick apples from her tree in the fall. When I knocked on her door, Mrs. Thompson seemed confused about why I was there. "Kitty dear, I thought you moved away after all that trouble with your family." "I did move away, Mrs. Thompson, but I wanted to ask you about something important. Did Madison ever tell you that I had stolen money from you?" Her expression became uncomfortable and guarded. "Well, yes, she did mention something like that. She said you had been going through a difficult time and might have taken some cash from my purse when you helped me bring in groceries last summer." I felt sick realizing that Madison had poisoned my relationship with neighbors who had known me since childhood. "Mrs. Thompson, I never took anything from you. In fact, I haven't helped you with groceries in over 2 years because I've been working full-time and living across town." She looked confused and a little frightened. "But Madison said she wanted to make it right. She gave me $200 to replace what you had taken. She seemed so upset about your behavior and worried about your mental health." Another piece of Madison's elaborate scheme became clear. She had convinced Mrs. Thompson that I was a thief, then offered to pay restitution for my supposed crimes. Mrs. Thompson received money she never lost, and Madison looked like a caring sister, cleaning up my messes. "Did anyone else in the neighborhood hear about this alleged theft?" Mrs. Thompson nodded reluctantly. "Madison asked me not to tell too many people because it would embarrass your family, but I did mention it to a few close friends. We were all very concerned about you and hoped you would get help for your problems." I spent the next week quietly investigating Madison's activities throughout our community. I discovered that she had spread similar stories about my supposed theft and emotional instability to at least 6 different neighbors. In each case, she had offered to pay restitution or provide assistance, positioning herself as the long-suffering sister trying to protect our family's reputation. But the most damaging discovery came when I decided to examine my father's business more closely. Harold owned a small construction company that specialized in residential renovations. He employed about 8 people and had built a solid reputation for quality work over 15 years. I remembered that Madison had been helping with bookkeeping and administrative tasks for the business during her gap year before college. She had access to company accounts, customer information, and financial records. Using public records and business databases, I researched my father's company finances and discovered several irregularities. There were gaps in project documentation, inconsistencies in customer payments, and discrepancies between reported income and actual deposits. I also noticed that several customers had left negative reviews mentioning problems with billing and communication, which seemed out of character for my father's usually excellent customer service. The most concerning discovery was a pattern of checks written from the business account that did not correspond to legitimate business expenses. The amounts were always under $500, small enough to avoid immediate detection, but large enough to add up to significant theft over time. When I cross-referenced the dates of these suspicious transactions with Madison's work schedule, they aligned perfectly with days when she was alone in the office handling paperwork. I realized that Madison had been systematically stealing from my father's business while using me as a scapegoat for various community thefts and financial problems. Her strategy was brilliant in its simplicity. Create a narrative about my supposed criminal behavior while positioning herself as the responsible family member cleaning up my messes. But her web of lies was about to unravel in a way she never anticipated. I had spent weeks gathering evidence and building a comprehensive case against her deception. The time had come to expose the truth and clear my name once and for all. 1 week before my wedding, I orchestrated the most important dinner party of my life. I called my parents and Madison, telling them I wanted to host a special pre-wedding celebration where we could finalize family roles in the ceremony and discuss our future relationship. I also invited David's grandmother Dorothy and Uncle Peter, explaining that I wanted my fiancé to meet more of our extended family before the wedding. My parents seemed pleased that I was making an effort to include everyone and bring the family together. I spent 3 days preparing for the evening, organizing evidence and planning exactly how to present the truth about Madison's systematic deception. David helped me arrange the dining room to accommodate everyone comfortably while ensuring that no one could leave easily once the conversation began. Dorothy arrived first, clutching her purse nervously but determined to finally tell the truth about the pharmacy receipts. Peter came next, bringing a folder of documents related to Madison's car accident scam. David set up his laptop to display bank records and credit reports if needed. When my parents and Madison arrived, they seemed relaxed and optimistic about the evening. My father brought a bottle of wine and my mother carried flowers for the table. Madison wore a new dress and had clearly spent time styling her hair for the occasion. "This is so nice, Kitty," my mother said, admiring the table settings. "It feels wonderful to have our family together again." We started with small talk and appetizers, allowing everyone to settle in before addressing more serious topics. Madison charmed David with questions about his business and compliments on his graphic design portfolio. My parents asked detailed questions about wedding logistics and honeymoon plans. But after the main course, I stood up and asked for everyone's attention. Before we finalize wedding plans, I need to address something that has been affecting our family for almost 2 years. The accusation that I stole money from Madison was false, and I can prove it. The mood in the room shifted immediately. Madison's smile faded, and my parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. "Kitty, we agreed to put the past behind us," my father said firmly. "Tonight is about moving forward, not reopening old wounds." The wounds never closed, Dad, because they were based on lies. Grandma Dorothy, would you please show everyone what you brought tonight? Dorothy's hands shook as she opened her purse and pulled out the pharmacy receipt, showing that I had paid for her medication with my own credit card on the exact date Madison claimed I stole from her college fund. This proves that Kitty used her own money to help me pay for my heart medication. She never stole anything from Madison's college fund. My parents stared at the receipt in stunned silence while Madison's face went pale. That doesn't prove anything, Madison said quickly. Maybe Kitty paid for the medication with money she stole from me. The timing could just be a coincidence. I pulled out my phone and displayed photos of the fake bank statements I had found hidden in Madison's jewelry box. These fabricated bank statements show withdrawals that never happened. Madison created fake evidence to support her accusation against me. My father took the phone and examined the photos closely, his expression growing more serious as he recognized the sophisticated nature of the forgery. Madison, where did these documents come from? I have no idea. Kitty probably made those herself to try to clear her name. She's been acting desperate and unstable for months. Uncle Peter cleared his throat and opened his folder. Actually, Madison called me 6 months ago claiming that Kitty had crashed her car and needed $3,000 for repairs. She sent me fake photos of damage and made up a whole story about Kitty's reckless behavior. I gave her the money, but the accident never happened. Madison's composure was starting to crack under the weight of evidence from multiple sources. Uncle Peter is confused about what happened. There were a lot of stressful situations around that time and details got mixed up. What about Mrs. Thompson and the other neighbors? I continued. You told them I had stolen money from them, then offered to pay restitution for my supposed crimes. You were creating a pattern of stories about my theft while positioning yourself as the responsible sister, cleaning up my messes. My mother looked confused and overwhelmed by the rapid presentation of evidence. Madison, is this true? Did you tell neighbors that Kitty was stealing from them? Before Madison could answer, we heard a knock at the door. I excused myself to answer it, knowing exactly who would be standing on my doorstep. Marcus Rodriguez, my father's business partner, stood in the hallway holding a thick folder of financial documents. His expression was grave and professional. Harold, I'm sorry to interrupt your family dinner, but we have a serious problem with the business accounts that can't wait until tomorrow. I invited Marcus inside, explaining that this was actually perfect timing for the conversation we were having about honesty and accountability within our family. Marcus spread financial documents across the dining room table, pointing to highlighted discrepancies and unauthorized transactions. Over the past 18 months, someone has been writing checks from our business account for personal expenses. The amounts are relatively small, but they total over $15,000. All of the checks have forged signatures that look like yours, Harold. My father examined the checks with growing alarm and anger. I never wrote these checks or authorized these payments. Marcus, are you saying someone has been embezzling from our company? Marcus nodded grimly. The bank provided security footage from several check cashing locations. The person making these transactions is a young woman with blonde hair who appears to be in her early 20s. He pulled out a printed image from a security camera showing Madison clearly visible as she cashed one of the forged checks. This footage is from 3 weeks ago. We also have records showing that all of these transactions occurred on days when Madison was working alone in the office. The room fell completely silent as everyone stared at the undeniable evidence of Madison's theft from my father's business. There was no way to explain away security camera footage or claim the evidence was fabricated. Madison finally broke down, tears streaming down her face as the full scope of her deception became clear to everyone in the room. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I just needed some extra money for school and clothes, and I thought I could pay it back before anyone noticed. But my father's expression had turned cold and businesslike. This isn't just about stealing money, Madison. You let me blame Kitty for problems you created. You destroyed your sister's relationship with our family to cover up your own crimes. My mother was crying now, finally understanding how Madison had manipulated everyone while systematically destroying my reputation and relationships. "You made us kick our own daughter out of her home based on lies. How could you do something so cruel to your own sister?" David spoke up from across the table, his voice steady but firm. "Madison, you didn't just steal money. You stole 2 years of Kitty's life, her relationship with her family, and her reputation in the community. The damage you caused goes far beyond anything that can be paid back." Marcus informed my father that he would need to press charges to protect their business and satisfy insurance requirements. Madison was facing potential felony charges for forgery, embezzlement, and identity theft. As the evening concluded with police reports and legal consultations, I felt a mixture of vindication and sadness. Justice was finally being served, but it had taken too long and cost too much in broken relationships and lost time. The truth was finally exposed, but the real work of rebuilding trust and healing our family was just beginning. 3 weeks after the confrontation dinner, Madison faced criminal charges for identity theft, credit card fraud, embezzlement, and forgery. The district attorney explained that her pattern of deception across multiple victims and institutions constituted felony-level financial crimes that carried serious legal consequences. As part of her plea agreement to avoid prison time, Madison was required to make full restitution to everyone she had defrauded. This included paying back the $15,000 stolen from my father's business, the $3,000 scammed from Uncle Peter, the money given to neighbors under false pretenses, and all charges made to credit cards opened in my name. The process of clearing my credit and reputation took several months of paperwork, but having official court documents proving Madison's guilt made everything move much faster. Credit bureaus removed all fraudulent accounts, and my credit score was restored to its previous good standing. More importantly, my father took responsibility for publicly clearing my name throughout our community. He personally visited every neighbor who had heard Madison's lies about my supposed theft and criminal behavior. He also posted a statement on social media explaining that I had been falsely accused and that he deeply regretted not investigating the accusations more thoroughly before taking action. "I owe my daughter Kitty a profound apology," Harold wrote on Facebook. "She was wrongly accused of crimes she did not commit, and I failed in my duty as her father to protect her from false accusations. Kitty has always been honest, responsible, and generous, and I am ashamed that I doubted her character based on lies." My mother, Carol, struggled more with accepting her role in the family crisis. She entered individual therapy to understand how she had enabled Madison's manipulation while neglecting my needs and feelings. The process was painful but necessary for her growth as a person and parent. "I realize now that I was so focused on protecting Madison from consequences that I stopped seeing you as my daughter too," she told me during one of our reconciliation conversations. "I chose to believe her version of events because it was easier than confronting the possibility that she was capable of such elaborate deception." Our family also began attending counseling together, learning how to communicate more effectively and establish healthier boundaries. The therapist helped us understand how Madison's behavior had developed over years of avoiding accountability for smaller lies and manipulations. Madison herself was required to attend psychological counseling as part of her legal sentence. The evaluation revealed that she had developed a pattern of using lies to avoid responsibility and gain advantages over others. Her therapist explained that this behavior often stems from deep insecurity and fear of not measuring up to others' expectations. While I felt compassion for Madison's underlying emotional struggles, I also set clear boundaries about our relationship going forward. Forgiveness did not mean forgetting what had happened or pretending that trust could be immediately restored. "I hope you can get the help you need to become a healthier person," I told Madison during one of our supervised family counseling sessions. "But rebuilding a relationship with me will require consistent honesty and accountability over a long period of time." As for my wedding, the final weeks of planning became a celebration of authentic relationships and genuine love. My grandmother Dorothy served as matron of honor, finally free from Madison's threats and manipulation. Uncle Peter walked me down the aisle after my father acknowledged that he needed to earn back the privilege of that honor through his actions, not just his words. David's family welcomed me with open arms, appreciating my strength and resilience, rather than viewing me as a potential business opportunity. His parents shared stories of their own family challenges and expressed admiration for how I had handled such a difficult situation with grace. The wedding ceremony took place in a small garden venue that felt intimate and meaningful. I wrote my own vows speaking about the importance of truth, trust, and choosing to surround yourself with people who believe in your character even during difficult times. David, you supported me when my own family had turned against me. You believed in my innocence when I had no way to prove it. You encouraged my dreams when I felt like my life was falling apart. Today I promise to be that same source of unwavering support for you through whatever challenges we may face together. During my reception speech, I shared lessons learned from the painful experience of being falsely accused and rejected by people I loved. For the past 2 years, I learned that sometimes losing toxic relationships makes room for authentic love to grow. I discovered that your character is not determined by what others say about you, but by how you respond to injustice and adversity. Most importantly, I learned that truth has a way of surfacing eventually, even when it takes longer than we hoped. I looked around the room at the people who had supported me through the darkest period of my life: David, grandmother, Dorothy, Uncle Peter, co-workers from the restaurant, and new friends who knew my real character. These are the people who form my true family, not just those who share my DNA, but those who share my values of honesty, loyalty, and integrity. My parents attended the wedding as guests rather than participants, understanding that they needed to rebuild trust through their actions over time. They seemed genuinely happy for my new beginning, while also grappling with regret about the years we had lost due to Madison's deception. 6 months after the wedding, David and I successfully qualified for a business loan to open our bakery. Sweet dreams. Bakery and cafe became our shared project, combining my passion for baking with David's expertise in marketing and design. We specialized in custom wedding cakes and artisanal pastries, creating beautiful confections that celebrated life's most important moments. The bakery became a gathering place for our community, hosting cooking classes and special events that brought people together over shared meals and conversations. I found deep satisfaction in creating something positive and nourishing from ingredients that were simple but genuine. My relationship with my parents slowly improved through consistent effort and honest communication. They worked hard to regain my trust by respecting my boundaries, supporting my business, and including David as a true member of our extended family rather than an opportunity for financial gain. Madison completed her court, mandated therapy and community service, eventually enrolling in college to study social work. She expressed a desire to help other young people who struggle with honesty and accountability, turning her own mistakes into a foundation for helping others avoid similar destructive patterns. While our sister relationship remained complicated and cautious, I appreciated her efforts to take responsibility for the pain she had caused and work toward becoming a better person. 1 year after my wedding, I received a letter from Madison that felt genuine and thoughtful, rather than manipulative. Kitty, I know that sorry will never be enough for what I put you through. I stole 2 years of your life, damaged your reputation, and almost destroyed your relationship with people who loved you. I also understand that forgiveness is a process that happens on your timeline, not mine. I just want you to know that I am committed to becoming someone worthy of a relationship with you, even if that takes many years to achieve. Looking back on everything that happened, I realized that being falsely accused and rejected by my family was one of the most painful experiences of my life, but it also led to discovering my own strength and resilience. I learned to trust my own judgment, build authentic relationships, and create a life based on my values rather than other people's expectations. My marriage to David grew stronger through facing challenges together and supporting each other's dreams. Our bakery flourished because it was built on a foundation of honesty, hard work, and genuine care for our customers and community. Most importantly, I learned that family is not just about blood relationships, but about choosing to surround yourself with people who believe in your character and support your growth. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is set boundaries with people who have hurt you while remaining open to authentic change and reconciliation when it occurs naturally over time. The journey from exile to vindication taught me that truth and justice may take longer than we hope, but they are worth fighting for with patience, courage, and the support of people who truly love and believe in you. Have you ever been falsely accused of something that damaged your relationships with family or friends? How did you handle the situation, and what did you learn about the importance of truth and authentic relationships? I would love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Please like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more stories about overcoming family challenges, and share this with anyone who might benefit from knowing that truth and justice eventually prevail. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you strength and wisdom in navigating your own relationships with honesty and grace.